Good afternoon. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Before we begin, may I ask you to switch off your mobile phones and to stand up for the academic procession. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Professor Zahra. Welcome to Atrium B, this beautiful location in the freshly renovated campus of the University of Antwerp, in the heart of our wonderful city as well, for the conferral of one of the honorary degrees for 20 and 23. My name is Anke. I'll be your hostess this afternoon, and it's an incredible pleasure to be surrounded by so much knowledge, intelligence, talents, and hard work. So let's make it a warm and interesting afternoon. Honorary Dr. Zahra will shortly be teaching a masterclass titled Harnessing the Powers of Entrepreneurship on a Global Scale. During the masterclass, you can ask questions using the chat function on the YouTube channel. This is, of course, for the people who are watching online. After the masterclass, there will be time for a Q&A session in which Professor Zahra will answer the questions you submitted. Of course, all these people here in the room can participate in the Q&A session by using this very old-fashioned technique of raising your hands. After the masterclass, we will proceed to the conferral of the honorary degree. But first, I would like to give the floor to Professor Koen van den Bemt, Dean of the Faculty of Sciences of... That's wrong. What is wrong in my text? Dean of the Faculty of Business and Economics, who will offer you an even warmer welcome.
We made it easy, but... Dear Rector, dear colleagues, dear friends, but of course, especially dear Professor Zahra, guest of honor, and also welcome Patricia Zahra, the wife of Professor Zahra. Welcome also to the family and friends of Professor Zahra, who hopefully can follow this masterclass and the ceremony online. We know some people are tuned in, so a big welcome also to this beautiful setting. I hope you see it a little bit online. As Dean of the Faculty of Business and Economics of the University of Antwerp, it is an honor and a true pleasure to welcome you here today, all of you, to the masterclass and the official honorary doctorate ceremony. With an honorary doctorate, we want to pay tribute to colleagues that have distinguished themselves in our broad discipline. You will take place among previous honorary doctors, such as Professor John Nash, Professor Richard Pagosi, Professor Donald Hambrick, Professor Stuart Myers, and Professor Matthias de Watripon, to name but a few that have gone before you. The importance of being able to bestow an honorary doctorate cannot be underestimated. That's clear. It serves not only as a recognition of academic excellence, but also, and hopefully, as an acceleration for joint research and future cooperation. Ladies and gentlemen, honorary doctors have many things in common. Of course, academic excellence. This is visible in a number of key publications and citations, of course, but also on the impact they have on their academic peers. But perhaps more importantly, honorary doctors are pioneers in their own disciplines, and I think this is really important, and especially the case in your case. I will not go too much in detail because then my good colleague, Professor Ine Palemans, will elaborate on this, and she can do that. But definitely, the field of corporate entrepreneurship, the talk is also related to that. I mean, to name a pioneer, it would be you. For the Faculty of Business and Economics, I want to focus on other aspects that highlight this honorary doctorate's importance for us to us. First, your work is multidisciplinary. Of course, this is in the broad field of business and economics, but drilling down, we see, and that was evident also this morning, but also yesterday, that finance, strategy, management, organization, and international business scholars have used your work and ideas as starting points for their own research. Secondly, you engage a lot with the world of practice. You have crossed the safe boundaries of academic research and academic teaching, and impacted also a lot of organizations and managers. What an excellent way, I think, to demonstrate also the true impact of research beyond the doors of our safe haven, the academia. Thirdly, we need to take your work very seriously, and I think as a university we try to do, not only the Faculty of Business and Economics. Developing an entrepreneurial mindset is key. So much of your work and the concepts you developed, can be applied to a university setting, I think, yes, and helped us also to increasingly valorize our own academic research. Now, that being said, once again, welcome to everyone. Dear Professor Zahra, thank you for accepting this honorary doctorate. And I will now give the word to my colleague, Professor Ine Palemans. Professor Palemans is not a stranger to you, of course, so that's also good. Professor Ine is a research professor at our faculty and working in the domain of entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial finance. So the link is, of course, clear. Professor Ine Palemans is what we call your nominator. It means that she has nominated you to receive the honorary doctorate, and now I gladly pass the word to my colleague. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Dear Professor Zahra, dear Rector, dear Dean, dear Patricia Zahra, colleagues, friends, and students, ladies and gentlemen. With this honorary degree, the Faculty of Business and Economics of the University of Antwerp pays tribute to Professor Zahra for his groundbreaking work in the development of the field of entrepreneurship. He is one of the founding fathers of this field. He was also one of the pioneering researchers of several subdomains: corporate entrepreneurship, international entrepreneurship, technology-based entrepreneurship, and social entrepreneurship, which are currently highly respected fields of research. Beyond his research on entrepreneurship, his work is also extremely important in various domains such as innovation, strategy, and management. His profound knowledge of these domains forms the basis of his ideas about entrepreneurship. While entrepreneurship is a phenomenon that has been around for a very long time, the field of entrepreneurship only emerged as a distinct academic discipline in the latter half of the 20th century. At that point in time, scholars generally did not take entrepreneurship seriously. Professor Zahra was one of the first to recognize the critical role that entrepreneurs play in driving economic growth and innovation. He speculated that technological advances and the increasing global interconnectedness of the world economy created new markets, causing an area of opportunities to emerge. Professor Zahra's approach of studying entrepreneurship in its context has inspired scholars in entrepreneurship, but also scholars in management, strategy, and international business. The internal and external organizational contexts affect the motivation and incentives of managers and entrepreneurs engaged in venturing activities. A significant impact of his output lies in research on corporate entrepreneurship, defined as a sum of a company's innovation, renewal, and venturing efforts. For instance, prior to Professor Zahra's research, knowledge and ideas about entrepreneurship had largely been treated as being homogeneous, paying little attention to how the entrepreneurial process might create different types of knowledge. His research has focused on what types of knowledge are being created in the course of the entrepreneurial process, how different entrepreneurial activities are related to the types of knowledge being created, and what the organizational mechanisms are that cultivate and exploit these different types of knowledge. Professor Zahra's contributions helped managers to be better able to identify and incorporate new knowledge and technologies into their operations, leading to increased innovation and competitiveness. It helped firms to keep up with the pace of technological changes, allowing them to adapt to new market conditions. Another major area where Professor Zahra has made key contributions is international entrepreneurship. While the extant literature had considered firms to engage in international activities only after they had evolved sufficiently over their life cycle and attained a certain age, size, and experience threshold, Professor Zahra instead demonstrated that some new ventures and firms are born global. A particular feature of his research has been to compare those new ventures, which are born global, to those that internationalize later or sequentially during their life cycle. Further, technology and innovation continue to disrupt traditional industries and create new opportunities for growth and development. A key source of uniqueness in Professor Zahra's research is that he underscores technology-based entrepreneurship as a strategic response to transform firms into leveraging the opportunities afforded by globalization rather than passively becoming another victim of globalization. Professor Zahra has also made significant contributions in the field of social entrepreneurship, for example, by classifying different types of social entrepreneurs, and he uses the behavioral theories of pro-social behavior to interpret the motives of social entrepreneurs and to link social entrepreneurship to the internationalization literature. Professor Zahra's research has significant social relevance, as it has played a key role in promoting entrepreneurial behaviors, entrepreneurial and strategic thinking, innovation and internationalization within and across organizations. Professor Zahra has taught undergraduate, MBA, and executive programs. He has been a consultant to several prominent companies and organizations in the US and the other countries around the world, and his clients include some of the world's largest global technology-based companies. He has created a more supportive environment for entrepreneurship and has ultimately helped to make the world a better place. Currently, Professor Zahra holds the Robert Buck Chair of Entrepreneurship and is a professor of strategy and entrepreneurship at the Carlson School of Management at the University of Minnesota. He has served as the department chair, the director of the Holmes Center for Entrepreneurship, and the academic co-director of Carlson Venture Enterprises. He also served as a founding co-director of the Center for Integrative Leadership at the University of Minnesota. Professor Zahra is the winner of the 2014 Global Award for Entrepreneurship Research. He has received several grants, honors, and awards, including 5 honorary PhD degrees. He has been visiting professor at several universities in Europe, the Middle East, and Asia. Professor Zahra's work has appeared in leading journals and has more than 110,000 citations on Google Scholar. He has served on over 25 editorial boards of the most influential journals. He was listed as Thomson Reuters' highly cited researcher and as one of the world's most influential scientific minds. It is thus my honor to introduce the masterclass of Professor Zahra, titled Harnessing the Powers of Entrepreneurship on a Global Scale. Professor Zahra, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ina. Thank you. So, I'm speechless and thankful, overwhelmed. I don't know what to say. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I appreciate you being here. So, without any more additional verbiage, my transition to entrepreneurship was really random. I was doing strategy. As you will see from my talk in a few minutes, I found out the companies that were trying to compete globally were reverting to innovation. They're becoming more and more entrepreneurial in their internationalization. So I followed them. I followed what they have done over a period of time, and I followed technological change. Those two things, I think, shaped my scholarship. I shaped the things I have done, and as you will see from my talk in a minute. Before I keep going forward, I wanted to thank the university and the rector for the generosity and recognition, the dean and the faculty of the School of Business and Economics. I remember that, Faculty of Business and Economics. And of course, Ina, who has been so creative and so kind and so generous in her. I did not know you knew that much English to say all of these good things about me. I appreciate it. I really, on a day like this, you feel overwhelmed. You don't know what your children know, correct? And she has been a great. So I think you should do the rest of my presentation. I wanted to thank all of you, my co-authors around the globe. Some of you are already on TV or internet, and you kept me going. You're the ones who taught me a great deal, and I really would never have survived that career that long without the help I got every step of the way. And some of you are already in the room, some are online. I want to thank, and of course, all of the audiences. And again, one more time, they're all over the place. I got all of these messages we're going to watch on TV, so hopefully you're going to put this in TV. And of course, the one person in the room that worked so very hard, Patricia Zahra, who has been, we have been married since 1984, so she suffered a lot, I think. So I think she, thank you. I think everybody suffers occasionally on marriage, but Patricia suffered more than most because she had to read many drafts of my work, and she always is kind to tell me to chop it off, remove this and remove this. One more person who is not here, and you will never see her, but if God created me, she made me. This woman right here, Judy Sena, who helped me move from Egypt to the United States many years ago and gave me a lifetime that I would have never imagined. I would never have been anything except for her generosity, for her kindness, and just thinking about her as I do every single day, I wanted to cry. But because she taught me something else, she told me to keep going, to see the best in people and try to do the best for other people. So hopefully I did some of that, lived that. One of the things I actually said a few minutes ago is that I found a technological change, and I was doing strategy work looking into governance and how governance systems affect companies' commitment to innovation. And I saw technological change inducing companies to internationalize and go abroad. I remember the work by Einstein, or the comment by Einstein said technological progress is like an axe in the hands of a terrible, pathological criminal, meaning it creates chaos, okay? And from that chaos, new order is coming. That's Schumpeterian argument, correct? That has been with us for a long period of time. So as you will see throughout my career, that kind of pathological criminal has been really good to me. It created a lot of chaos. It created a new form of organization and so on. So entrepreneurship for me is like the act of doing great things. And we see people trying to send people to live on the moon. They're creating new industries. They're creating new businesses. They're doing social things. And that's what really, really attracted me to transition from my early work in strategy that some of you already know, reminded me of today, and to entrepreneurship. I like that variety. I like the ability they do it, and they are doing it more and more in a global scale. A few years ago, Kana wrote the book about 1 billion entrepreneurs in praise of the entrepreneurs in China and India, because huge class of entrepreneurs are being born because of the new technology, the new markets, the internationalization. But entrepreneurship has become a global thing, has become a global, in Africa, all the 6 or 7 continents, depending on how you count, men, women, all races, and we can talk about this if you wanted in the question and answer, but it is really a global, phenomenon. I started doing this work, as I said, 1984, the same year I married Patricia. I think she drove me that way. Anyway, and then I have been working on that. And so I initially started with Fortune top 500 companies, which dominated the economy. I was trained in strategy, so I started with their looking into their strategic move. I started into their innovative activities and so on. But as my work developed over a period of time, actually, I tried to connect that work. As I was looking at this graph here today, actually, we're kind of getting myself ready for this talk, I remember 2 things, and that actually, it dawned on me. One, I never know how to compete at the center of any field, but I'm much better in intersecting fields. So that's what I have done over a period of time. Secondly, you'll find this is really interesting. I started, I thought, with 3 books in an old economics 3 chapters in an economics book in my Economics 101 in Egypt many years ago. There was a chapter in technology, chapter on globalism, the professor said, and chapter on a word that we could not translate at that time in Arabic, entrepreneurship. I hated those chapters. They were poorly written. They were translated from somewhere else. I did not know that I'll end spending most of my lifetime trying to connect these. And I actually dawned on me that this is what I did. Finally, not that I understand it, finally I did something to understand those 3 chapters. But for those of you who are old enough, if you look into our definition of the field of strategic management many years ago, it actually contained all of these areas. Now they're kind of segregated and separated, and people have created those silos over a period of time. But the point, as I continue my conversation with you today, that middle dot circle is what I do, correct? It's the intersection of different things. So some people tell me I do everything, but actually I don't. I just look at the intersection, so that leaves a lot of space for everybody else. What triggered my interest was, again, the observation in the 80s. Again, I'll come back to the year 1984. I was recognizing the competition coming from Japan, and Japan was winning in a lot of new industries, electronics and so on, and the car industry and so on, and they were winning and taking market share away from American companies, European companies, and these companies were really desperately trying to do this. They were restructuring their activities. They are firing people, correct, to get rid of the fat, if you will. They are kind of building their organizations. They doing all of these things. And one of the concepts that started taking shape at the time was the notion of corporate entrepreneurship. And that's what I thought that would be the label for the kind of things I have been doing separately. And that's where I started. So I focused on these larger companies. For me, corporate entrepreneurship is like how you renew organizations, well-established companies, how you give them new life, how you give them, it's like surgery. It's not plastic surgery, but real surgery. You kind of trim the fat, but give them the power to innovate, to venture into new arenas, create competitive skills, and so on. That's why it is so closely, in my mind, closely related to a field of strategy. So I spent quite a bit of time looking into what how the organizational culture is all about, how the structure is all about, how it affects entrepreneurship, what's the role of middle managers, and so on. For those of you in the audience who remember some of that work, I also spend a lot of time trying to focus on the measurement of corporate entrepreneurship, the conceptualization, and some of these things actually have survived time. I see people citing them, and which makes me happy about that it's not all gone to waste, if you will. So one of the things that I found out very interesting about this work is that it actually tells us a little bit about how companies create entrepreneurial activities by exploring beyond where they go, and that kind of trying to achieve the balance between exploration and exploitation, the literature that became later ambidexterity, and they contributed to that, how they learn in the process, and how they use that learning to induce additional entrepreneurial activities, which actually help create value for the organization, for the shareholders. It allows the organization to build new capabilities that allow them to do things better, but capabilities that allow them to adapt and grow beyond their wildest imagination by entering new fields and competing very differently. So that's what it is. But one of the things that my work actually helped me kind of think about is internationalization. I noticed that companies started to go about internationalization, so I started thinking more deeply about the link between internationalization and so on. During that time, I started thinking about the social contribution of entrepreneurship, even though I have not written it, but that was behind in my head. And I started thinking about 3 buckets of contributions: one technological, one financial, and one social, in terms of creating social value. That theme I actually stayed a little bit longer. It took me a little bit longer to develop, but I actually connected these. I tried to connect them at least in my writing over a period of time. Just for those of you who are interested in reviewing this, again, in terms of the technological contribution, have to do with industry evolution, creating different organizational form, and so on. In terms of the financial contribution, obviously, these are the better known I documented the link between corporate entrepreneurship and organizational performance, and looked into what it means for value creation, market value of these companies, and so on. And then, of course, in terms of social value at the time, it was about job creation and so on. So from the beginning, I actually see that in some of my early papers, in different papers, never in one single paper, but that kind of developed over a period of time. I also, in terms of thinking about under what conditions do these kind of contributions materialize, I started thinking about the institutional context of corporate entrepreneurial activities, in terms of the environment, in terms of competition, in terms of the regulatory environment, and so on. And I started looking into the variables that moderate those kind of relationships. So we can talk about this, but again, there is a number of studies that several people, myself included, have looked into that. So it's not only about making entrepreneurship happen, but tying it to the organizational structure, the culture, the environment, because they seem to moderate the payoff, the type of payoff that you get within a particular environment. One of the biggest shifts that took place in the field in general, and my work in particular, and it has a lot to do with the value creation and entrepreneurship, is that I started seeing Fortune Top 500 companies, the ones that I followed for a long period of time, internationalizing their operations. They're going international in response to the competition. They're entering new market arenas. They're getting into emerging markets. And so I started thinking about, again, the link between internationalization and entrepreneurship. How they build those capabilities to enter new markets, markets that are very different from their home markets, how they achieve that integration across different units. Obviously, there is a body of literature in international business that has grown since. And I was not part of that. I was thinking more about the strategic kind of choices companies made, but there is that tremendous body of literature became very useful as I started becoming more and more interested in integrating this. One of the things I realized is that you have 2 different types of ventures in any market. A lot were created by independent entrepreneurs. I was not studying these at all. but then I was looking into companies and how they responded to organizational change and industry change. And that's when I started saying, how do they differ, correct? How these two different animals differ. Why are the younger companies winning over the larger companies? And that's where one of the biggest kind of, not insight, revelations to me was, is how those two companies, different types of entrepreneurial ventures interact. And that actually led me to write a number of papers. And that's, again, I started looking into the different type of competition. So traditionally, it was competition between large companies, correct? These are the big elephants, I give them just size. And again, they were trying to fend their markets against each other. It was taking market share from established players. Then came the new ventures, independent new ventures primarily, that were creating new markets, new industries. They were winning. They were stealing market share from even existing companies. One of the things about these companies were also going international fast, and that's where the body of literature that was born in international entrepreneurship, Ben Oviatt and Patricia McDougall. Ben was like 2 offices away from where I was, and he was writing about this, and I was writing about it, but of course he actually published his work ahead, and I learned a lot from that. But anyway, the point was, I started looking into the response by larger companies to the entry of these younger entrepreneurial ventures. Initially, some of them tried to obfuscate, sometimes tried to imitate, sometimes try to work with them and collaborate, and I see this gradual kind of shift. Okay, if we cannot beat him, we need to join him in terms of collaboration. So that theme became part of my research over a period of time, how these companies relate to one another, how they learn from one another, how they exchange resources, and how this creates value for these companies' respective stakeholders and shareholders. That actually alerted me to the fact that these larger companies get much more than knowledge, okay? They learn about new business models, they learn about business creation. Many of these larger companies created business divisions that are trying to focus on business development to imitate the entrepreneurial companies. I started corporate venture activities, and that was one of the big questions. One of the things that they wanted to do is to learn from these larger companies. So I started looking into the effect of internationalization on learning and how the learning affects these companies' performance, and the factors that affect that movement from learning to organizational performance. One of the things, again, that what I've done in some of my papers is to think more about what do these larger companies learn from the new ventures. They learn a lot about the market, they learn about the competition, they learn about how to think about different business models, if you will. And I started kind of contextualizing that work, and especially in terms of technology, which I am obsessed. And I started looking to the depth, breadth, and speed of learning and how it affects these companies' ability not only to compete, but also create value in terms of market. So these larger companies that I was obsessed with at a point in time, again, became kind of, I realized I need to learn about different types of things in their market. And again, they're looking about political changes, competitive changes, technological and social changes. So again, and they needed to collaborate. They needed not only with each other, but also with these newer companies in very different markets. And that's built their ecosystem, and that became a big theme, in not only in my work, but in the literature. So I started becoming part of this conversation. They collaborated with universities, research centers, other companies, and so on. The gazelles here, or the pictures of the gazelles, these are the younger companies from which they also had to learn. So I started looking into how these companies kind of learn to build their ecosystem and learn their alliance portfolio, if you will, and how they manage these relationships to create value for themselves. And that led me, and again, I write a lot about how they capture this learning, how do they bring it within the organization. So I wrote with Jerry George, we wrote this paper on absorptive capacity, the ability to gather knowledge from external sources, process this knowledge, internalize it, correct, and transform it into creative applications Could be products, it could be innovations, it could be business activities, whatever, different from which they can create value. And our work became actually fairly cited. I was surprised at that. I was happy that it's cited. I'm not going to object. But again, part of it is trying to kind of separate, distinguish between acquiring knowledge, and which everybody was writing about, how to get knowledge, how you internalize it, to transforming this knowledge into useful, productive activities, which became the realized absorptive capacity. We got some criticism, but again, it opened the door to ask the question, how do you create all of this knowledge coming in? How do you process it, and how you make sense of it, and how you introduce things? And my own, as I was doing this, I was still watching all of these new ventures going abroad in massive amounts of work, and several people were writing about this time. So I started thinking about this literature about international entrepreneurship. Ina, in her presentation, talked about some of this work, so I'm not going to repeat it. Basically, these became the international entrepreneurship, or born global companies that went early on from at birth or soon after internationally. The question is, why do they do that? Which type of companies? How do they develop their strategy? How do they learn about markets that did not even exist? How do they overcome the institutional cultural barriers? How do resource limitations? All of these became the subject matter for me. What makes them survive? What gives them advantage? And some of the work that we have done that I really think was really different was about the notion of learning advantage of newness, correct? So everybody was talking about the disadvantage of being young and inexperienced, and don't have resources and so on, which is true, but they also have advantages. When you're new, okay, you are not fat, you are not the elephant that I've been talking about. You don't have a lot of institutional inertia. So the owner is the helm of the organization. So you can learn faster, you can implement what you learn. So the feedback loop is pretty short, which makes you able to implement, you innovate, try and err, and survive, and so on. So we actually did a number of papers on that. So one of the things that, and this is aside, I never thought about this. I got a call one day and say, one of the editors said, we would like you to talk about how international entrepreneurship relates to business ethics. I told him, I don't know much about business. He said, I know you will do something. So I started thinking about this international. I started looking into the literature, and I found actually there are companies that go international, but not to make money. They're interested in social issues. Okay. Then surprisingly enough, as I was writing the paper, I got another invitation to write another paper about social ventures. I said, okay, what about if I write about the internationalization of social ventures? Ina mentioned that. So these were, again, chance entries into the field, correct? But it gives me kind of a new direction about the internationalization of social ventures. And I've written a number of papers of that. The entrepreneurs who drive this, why do they do it, how they do it, and how they differ from the traditional business companies in terms of internationalization. And more importantly, how we define value creation, not money, but about social value creation, and I have part of this. One of the things that some of you do not know, and I don't always publicize, few of you know this, I studied religion. I studied theology when I was a child, when I was in the university. I got my degree in business, so I'm not fake, but I actually have also training in theology. At one point in time, I wanted to be a missionary. So when I got that invitation, I said, this is not God calling, but somebody else is saying, you have to go back to your roots. So that's why I took the call, and I took it seriously. And actually enjoyed working on that, because it became like, I don't know much about this, but I'm going to see what I can do differently, and it became very exciting and all of this stuff. So I've written a number of papers on this, all of which actually were invited papers, and that was really interesting for me because I found that a joyous celebration of what I did not want to do. And I told you, I get into things a little bit, without planning, okay? So I started thinking, over a period of time, I've been asked again to talk about the role of entrepreneurship in creating value. So I started thinking about the social impact of entrepreneurship. And I kind of, as I look back into the work I have done, and the field kind of mirrors that in many ways, or I mirror the field in many other ways, is that we really don't talk about with the social role of entrepreneurship, because there are people who assume the fact that you pay taxes, the fact that you hire people, the fact that you run your own business, you're already contributing to society. And I respect that. But in my mind, I think you need to do more. So that's where it is. So I started talking about this, and we'll talk about. So my work actually touches on 4 or 5 things that together, I think, define what I think in terms of the social impact of entrepreneurship. So one of the things I take pride in is when I have been one of the people who have been willing to talk about social entrepreneurship. My former colleague, God bless him, Mike Wright, and I wrote a couple of papers about the dark side of entrepreneurship. We talked about how entrepreneurs abuse the environment, they abuse people sometimes. In some countries, they actually conspire to keep the status quo, and they make it difficult to make economic or social progress. They support military coup d'etats, okay, in some governments. So they are not always, and I don't see anything wrong with that. They go to church on Sunday, or Saturday, or whatever day they go to, correct? So they see that, but again, we don't recognize the negative externalities of entrepreneurship enough. So we started to talk about this, because I think without recognition of that, we don't have a fair evaluation of the contribution of entrepreneurs. And then, again, I started thinking about how does the field kind of define social role of entrepreneurship. We talked about a number of things. They do make social contributions, charitable contributions. They champion social causes. They actually create social ventures that create social goods, address social grand challenges, and so on. They introduce social innovations and social solutions for existing problems. So all of these are very important contributions. Some of the things that people talk about is that entrepreneurship could be a panacea or a solution to poverty in society. So actually one day I was talking to one of my Chinese co-authors. I said, you have this database about different entrepreneurial activities in China over an extended period of time, and I have other databases, and we started saying, who benefits more from entrepreneurship? Okay, because the argument is entrepreneurship can uplift everyone, take the poor and kind of make them rich. And some people do, some become billionaires, correct? But is this really true? So we started looking into 4 classes in society, okay, lower end of the economic spectrum, again, below average in terms of income, on the below middle class and upper middle class, and these are taken from a sociological study, and top of the pyramid, economic pyramid, the rich people. Okay, so the argument in the literature is that people who are toward the end of the economic spectrum tend to engage in limited scale, necessity-based entrepreneurship that will help them survive. Okay, the others is that they have a lot of opportunities. They can also support the pursuit of larger scale businesses, and we find that to be true. But what we find out is that when they engage in entrepreneurship, okay, these people who are pursuing those other opportunities, the rich actually get richer in bigger scale. People who are doing small scale, they do better than not engaging in entrepreneurship, but not much. So they barely cover their expenses, they barely take care of the necessity, which is better than being dependent on social welfare. But in the middle class, we find the differentiation. If you're toward the upper end of middle class, you tend to do better. If you're just average middle class, there is no great benefit. And actually, the literature tells us that the middle class in any society is probably the one that's most likely to engage in entrepreneurial activities the most. So that's why this is finding. So we find that the rich actually can get richer, and the poor do not get as rich as you want. The reason why this is important is that it perpetuates inequality in society. So if you're trying to help uplift people, then you need to work on making this a little bit different, correct? You give them more incentives, support systems, and all of the education, and all of the things that the literature talks about. So, but this was one of those insights that we really thought was really interesting in terms of why some people argue that entrepreneurship uplifts people, while others talk about the fact that it perpetuates that. The another question in the literature, okay, what happens to a community or a society where you have a lot of social ventures? Social ventures, they typically have more than one bottom line. They're trying to make money, but also address social causes, correct? Does this drive traditional ventures, the money-seeking ventures? Actually, we find out that's not true. We'll find that the more social ventures you have, the better the quality of life in the community, the more traditional venture. And the opposite is true. So the more ventures you have, some of the best known social ventures have been created by very well-to-do, very successful technology-based entrepreneurs. And that's one of the key insights. And we can talk about the great foundations many of the successful entrepreneurs have created. So it is that duality. You need to have both. One to kind of provide the social capital, the lubricant in society, but the other one provide the financial resources, and that interaction over a period of time can move the needle. And that, I have written on that a number of times in several papers, that can create a social multiplier. You improve the quality of life in society, that it makes people feel safe, they become much more willing to invest in a community, that creates financial capital. The financial capital, the surplus can be used to create, again, momentum for entrepreneurial activities and so on. So how much of a social capital and financial social multiplier, we have not been able to determine that empirically. I'm not going to talk about this, but again, in one of my papers, I guess, we struggled with this. How do you, we're talking about all of these social ventures and financial ventures adding the social wealth in society. So in one of the papers, I was really intrigued by that for almost a couple of years until we came up with this little equation. Again, I put it there just to know that I know what an equation looks like. Okay, but again, how do you determine economic wealth? Again, some people will say by the cumulative value of companies in a given industry or sector. Okay, what about social wealth? How do you create that? What does it mean for people to feel safe in a community, or people to feel good in a community, or feel good about the future of their children, education? You deal with all of the grand social challenges. I think part of the reason I mentioned this is that we have a lot of work to do in terms of looking into the different components of that equation, but at least it's out there, hoping that somebody, or maybe one day I'll get back to it and try to figure out some of this. One of the things, and this is one of the last themes in my work, and that became really important. As I told you, I've been following the acts wherever it falls, the technological change. And I started, as with everybody else, the last few years we have been dominated, inundated by technological change. Probably every one of you right now misses his or her own iPhone. You wanted to look into your internet, correct, to look for your messages. Okay, digital technology, digitalization of everything, correct, internet. So, and I started changing the industry, bringing up disruption. I said, this is the ideal place for me to study entrepreneurship and look into value creation, value destruction. So I have been doing a number of papers, some of which are in print, some in different stages of review. So I have been looking into this again, looking into digital technologies of all different types, affecting the evolution of economic ecosystems. Ecosystems are this circle of all of the relationships among the different stakeholders that have to do with one industry or one product class or category of products, correct? That helps. Actually, large companies, the corporate companies, corporations are engaged more and more in terms of entrepreneurship through transformation, building capabilities, and that, again, they have created billions and billions of new companies or entrepreneurial ventures around the globe, and we're seeing that effect has been going on for a long period of time. So again, some of the questions that, again, I kept asking, how they lead to different creation of entrepreneurial variety, the different business models, how you attract investment in particular ecosystems, and how companies of different types, of different parts of that space compete with one another. I cannot escape the fact that I always ask the question, how do they compete with one another? Because I come from strategy, I always remain to that. Okay, one of the things that I've also looked into is, again, how companies, we're seeing a lot of the digital companies competing in platforms. So I'm not going to build on that. Look, all of these companies are very well known to us, correct? And all of them kind of work and collaborate on platforms, but they also compete in platforms. So what gives birth to all of these platforms, how companies gain entry, and how they compete, how they differentiate themselves. So all of these issues, again, come to bear on how they create value for their shareholders, if you will. Again, part of the going back to the role, again, I started thinking about what does it mean in terms of the social implications of entrepreneurship, in terms of the value creation on this platform, and from the beginning, and so on. One of the things that I really paid a lot of attention to, I think Ina and some of the people who have been talking to me in particular, are kind of what is the effect, how do the platforms help give birth to entrepreneurship, correct? One of the key foundations is allowing access to different sources of finances. And we're seeing that around the globe. Finance is becoming more and more prevalent, even though still now we're seeing all of the deglobalization, decoupling, and all of these things are becoming things a little bit more difficult, but also access to talent. Now, a lot of countries are given, those visas where you can be in Portugal, but actually working in the UK, correct? A lot of countries like Latvia and all of these giving people citizenship by proxy, I guess, digital citizenship. All of these things are becoming really important, and that would not have happened. The movement of working from anywhere, and you can build your capabilities so you don't hire all of these people in one place. All of these things come to bear in terms of the creation of those different activities. And many of these companies are born international. They compete internationally. They work internationally. Their labor force dispersed around the globe. The physical location is ill-defined. It's like, being in heaven or something like that. Okay, and then again, part of that, again, what I mean by entrepreneurship, the different types of entrepreneurial activities there. So again, we talked about how these companies learn, how they evolve, and how they compete. We're in the early stages of doing that. The field is actually speculating at this stage. We're trying to kind of see what companies are doing and see where we're going and what it means in terms of learning. One of the things I think everyone right here wants to be rich. We're seeing digital technology being that axe in the hands of the criminal, a pathological criminal, creating havoc, creating disruption in so many industries. But out of this disruption is creating unicorns, companies that are bigger than life, $1 billion or more at their initial IPO, initial public offering. And we're seeing the birth of many of these in China, in the United States, and several other countries, including Finland, believe it or not. So when I was looking at statistics where these companies are located, but the reason I'm telling you that is that these companies are the source of a lot of job employment, a lot of social contributions, a lot of, again, economic wealth for their society. They're also magnets because they attract other companies into their ecosystem. They're also, they work through multiple suppliers and value chain. And so it's not only about making money and highly valued company, but changing the ecosystem in general and the quality of life in a given society. One final contribution of entrepreneurship that people don't always recognize, and scholarly, even though there is a body of literature on that, is institutional entrepreneurship, because we don't always acknowledge it, because it comes from sociology and other places, social movement, that some entrepreneurs become advocates. You see them on TV advocating for the environment, advocating for social causes, or dealing with hungry children in Africa or diseases in Africa and so on. They articulate those needs, they have the money, they have the resources, they have the recognition that really does this. And this is one of the key things I think we need to study. What happens when you have celebrity entrepreneurs becoming really institutional change agents, and they affect the birth and growth of these companies. So I'm going to conclude, believe it or not. I know that you're eager to hear that. Thank you. So I wanted to conclude by saying three little things. Well, as you probably have seen by now, again, technological change creates and destroys and recreates all different forms of entrepreneurship. These entrepreneurial activities are not only about products and technologies and buildings and machines. It's all about human needs, about social change, okay? Somewhere around the globe right now, while you and I are talking, I guess there's somebody trying to do something that will change the way you think, the way we see, the way we drive, the way we sleep, or the way we walk, whatever you think about it, somebody's working on it, not only to make money, but to give their life meaning. And that's what one of the biggest powers of entrepreneurship. I'll conclude by one quote that I really like from Steve Jobs, one of my favorite. During the pandemic, I spent a lot of time watching all of his videos, and this is one kind of short video. He said, the people who are crazy enough to think they are going to change the world are exactly the same people who are going to change the world. They dream big, they don't know where to stop, they do not know where to say no, they keep trying until they get it right sometimes. Okay, thank you very much. Should I sit down now? No. Yeah.
Well, you didn't finish yet, so but let me first welcome you again to Antwerp. But in line with a good old tradition in academia, we have a Q&A. I will take it short, 15 minutes, not longer, but we have to go for the questions. Are there any questions from the audience first? Anybody who had, because it's amazing, I thought you could catch the work of Professor Zahra into absorptive capacity and entrepreneurship, but I see I still have to do some reading, right? Any questions from the audience? Yeah, in the back. Just a moment.
Please make it an easy question.
Well, I have the easy part. I pose the question.
No, I'm talking
you have the difficult part.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Professor Zahra, first for the very interesting evolution of entrepreneurship, coming from strategic management, actually. I study technology transfer, also with the intersection of entrepreneurship. And what I do wonder is, because you also say that there are two kind of different firms, like corporate ventures and startups, innovative ventures. How do you see academic spin-offs? Or can you categorize them, or are they in between? Because I find it very difficult to see in which direction you should go.
Well, to me, academic entrepreneurship is a legitimate body of work. Even my best friends work on that, correct? But, there are unique settings about academic institutions. That not to deny their role, not at all. But I just don't, because I don't do a lot of work in that area, only my friends write about him, so I do not touch him. But I know there is a strong body of literature. Actually, we have a paper in the Academy of Management Perspectives a couple of years ago where we actually trying to integrate some of the work in academic entrepreneurship and so on. So, and the work that we were doing at the time about, exploitation of patents and technological resources and so on. So I know it is there. It's really good work. There is not much I can say about the. I categorize those two types because I understand them. I saw them, correct? But it does not mean I deny God or anything like that. No, not at all. I just, that's good that you're doing that kind of work. Yeah.
I mean, because they're also kind of like technology-based ventures.
Yes.
And universities are not real organizations, but you might observe several patterns like inertia.
The truth is, I haven't actually looked into Wikipedia a couple of times. I was looking for a inclusive typology of different types of ventures, and there are like 7, 8 different typologies. Some technology-based, some are not, correct? Some are international, some are not. So it's to put it all in one kind of, so that might be a challenge for you and me, is to put it all, develop this, and the overall typology that will connect it. But there are companies that are, some of the ventures created by companies that are not technology-based. Some are technology-based. Some of the same thing with individual ventures. So that's why the overlapping is a bit more difficult to integrate than I thought.
Okay,
thank you. Yes.
Anybody else? I cannot imagine there are no questions after such a long and beautiful talk. There's another question here in the front.
Miss, ma'am, you're asking, she was waiting for,
Yeah,
maybe, Mr. Okay.
Maybe just introduce yourself and maybe stand up. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Zeynep. I'm a PhD student at this faculty. I saw that you mentioned the dark side of entrepreneurship, and part of my research revolves around the dark triad and the dark traits of entrepreneurs. So I was a little happy to see that on the slides, not in a dark sense. But you also mentioned technological disruptions, creating new opportunities for entrepreneurship and also destroying some. What do you think some of the technological disruptions are that create more darkness within entrepreneurship? Or do you think that studying the dark traits of entrepreneurs is something that we should do? Is it too niche, or do you think that this is a necessity?
Well, very much. Thank you, Zeynep. I actually know your name, Zeynep Hagazi, correct? So, see, I can read mind. I actually met her today. So, thank you for talking to me. So, yeah, I think you're asking two related questions. Do traits have to do with the dark side of entrepreneurship? Definitely. What the psychologists have been much better than management people in terms of documenting that effect in terms of personality. Narcissism could be a good thing or could be a bad thing. So the work by Don Hambrick, whose name was mentioned here, he wrote a lot recently about narcissism in larger companies. It can drive companies to greatness, but it could be an illusion also that creates tremendous disasters for those companies if you are not, you don't have a well-balanced top management team. The same with entrepreneurs, correct? They're motivated by achievement that can drive companies for growth and greatness, but at the same time, it could, make them walk all over everybody at any cost. They wanted to get there at all cost. So I mentioned Steve Jobs, and if you read about his history, again, there are a lot of people who loved him, idealized him, but there are a lot of people who thought he was ruthless, correct? Had no heart, he didn't care. He, perfecting the product with the dominance. So again, you have that duality in terms of entrepreneurial personality. The only fear I have is going back in time, because where I started doing my work on entrepreneurship, and I actually don't do a lot of individual level entrepreneurship because of that, is that everybody was saying how old the person when you become an entrepreneur, what did your father do, what did your mother do, where did you live, and trying to generalize. And we found 20 years later that this is really not a predictor of entrepreneur. So if we're using traits to predict behavior, I really, really appreciate that kind of work, and I think that's the most significant kind of shift in that body of literature. So I compliment you taking that direction. Thank you.
Can we have one more? If not, then I take the advantage of being here and ask you a question.
Yes.
So I was surprised to see the social venturing and then let's say the international social venturing, also the institutional ventures and so on. Working myself in Africa, now in Tanzania for a while, NGOs and let's say social ventures and so on, it's still a very traditional business, right?
Yes.
So what is the role of entrepreneurship according to you? What could be the value added of entrepreneurship in that area? Because it's a non-traditional, so it's a traditional business, very institutionalized, also governments are involved, but on the other hand, you see there's enormous opportunities.
Yes. So I think the group of companies I'm talking about are companies that are created to solve a specific problem, correct? Like hunger or child labor or things like that. And most of them actually bring in business school education to the task. They have financial models, but at the same time focused on providing new solutions to existing problems. That's what the connection is, correct? So they act like a traditional venture, but the product is a social solution, social model. That's what makes it a little bit different. NGOs are not always like that, correct? They have sometimes a political mandate. They have a broader public good kind of you know, some of them are specialized, some are not, so they vary quite a bit. So that's what I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Any last question? It's your last chance. If not, we can go to the next step in the organization. Go ahead. Who's next? No? So we can go. Sorry, we can go.
Yes, you can take your seat.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Zahra, for your inspiring masterclass and, of course, for answering the questions. It is now time for the official moment. It is now time to confer the honorary degree on Professor Shaker Zahra. Nominator Professor Ina Paalman will deliver the laudation before the official conferral, and afterwards the honorary doctor can give his own word of thanks.
Dear Professor Zahra, dear Shaker, it's an honor to know you. In 2012 in Boston, I was sitting at a small round table in a lobby of a very big hotel where the Academy of Management conference was organized. And I was very nervous. It was my first AOM conference, and I had sent you an email beforehand to ask if we could meet. I was a junior PhD scholar with some ideas on the topic of internationalization, but had no publications yet, and I was waiting for you. And suddenly, a big group of people, I think 30 people, entered the building. And there were you, right in the middle. My stress levels even increased more, because apparently everyone wanted to talk to you. And I was there, sitting at my small table. But our eyes met, and you came over to me, and we had our first chat. It was great meeting you, and 8 months later, I visited you for the first time in Minneapolis. Every time I visited you, you were waiting for me at the airport and drove me to my stay. We had many talks at the office and also over dinners with good food at your home. Sorry, Shaker, if everyone wants now to visit you. But you are connected with people all over the world, and I truly believe that everyone can learn from you. Your dedication to research is clear in the way you take time to guide scholars. You give chances to young people by working with them and talking to them. You are responsible for creating that solid community, including young junior and more senior researchers. Today, doing multidisciplinary research is more important than ever. However, you are one of those rare individuals who has managed to excel in multiple disciplines ranging from strategy, management, technology to entrepreneurship for more than 4 decades. Over the course of your impressive career, you have demonstrated a remarkable ability to synthesize complex ideas from multiple fields and offer important and impactful findings that have revised our views and have also shaped the field of entrepreneurship. Shaker, your expertise and passion for the subject have truly inspired me and many others. I have learned from you in many ways. Theoretical thinking is something I, for instance, learned from you. There was no course that could explain to me how to think theoretically at a higher level and more deeply. But one conversation with you, walking around one of the Minnesota's many lakes, made me realize I had to start thinking differently. Once when we were walking through Ghent, I was again amazed by how you actively and conscientiously examine and analyze information. Even the things you just see on the street or things you experience. For example, remember our visit to a restaurant in Ghent, where all kinds of meat were on the menu, such as crocodile meat. Suddenly, you came up with a whole analysis of which types of strange meat exist, how they are transported, why people eat it, and so on. So you pay attention to every little detail. So if you go to a special restaurant with Shaker, be careful. Your curiosity, social and emotional interests lead to all sorts of questions in your head. You critically think them through in an explorative way. You see problems, solutions, facts, and challenges that others miss, and you can approach them in innovative ways. Your thinking outside the box makes you so unique, and talking to you helps me to put the puzzle pieces together. And it's my hope that we can have many more talks in the future. Generations of students and scholars over the world have read and studied your work. The sheer number of citations on Google Scholar shows the enormous impact of your research. Your unique mix of bountiful energy, great insights, creativity, and unsurpassed dedication has allowed you to remain productive and intellectually vibrant over a period of 4 decades. But it's not just your achievements in the academic world that make you such a deserving honoree. You are a person of a great character, integrity, humor, and kindness. Your selflessness, generosity, and unwavering commitment to making the world a better place have inspired countless others over the course of their career, and you continue to be a role model for all of us. So, today, on behalf of the entire academic community, I would like to express my deepest gratitude and appreciation for all that you have done. Your contributions to the field of entrepreneurship, strategy, innovation, and management are immeasurable, and you truly deserve to be recognized and celebrated. And for these reasons, I request that the rector honor Professor Shaker Zahra with an honorary degree from the University of Antwerp.
Thank you very much. I feel like I have died then. Yes, good. Thank you.
Okay. Dear attendees, you all, on the recommendation of the Faculty of Business and Economics and by decision of the Executive Board, the University of Antwerp confers upon Professor Shaker A. Zahra, Robert E. Buke Chair of Entrepreneurship and Professor of Strategy and Entrepreneurship, Carlson School of Management, University of Minnesota, the degree of Doctor Honoris Causa in Business and Economics, for his groundbreaking work in the development of the field entrepreneurship, incorporating a multidisciplinary approach to examine companies and industries on a global scale from perspectives of innovation, strategy, and management. He was one of the pioneer researchers of several subdomains, as are corporate entrepreneurship, international entrepreneurship, technology-based entrepreneurship, and social entrepreneurship, which are currently highly respected fields of research. Hereby, I declare our colleague Dr. Honoris Causa of the University of Antwerp to confer you with this special medal and also with one new diploma for you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. thank you very much again for all of the wonderful words that I feel like I've died, and this was, I should try to die one more time to get some of these beautiful things. I did not know you can say all of these words and get away with them. Thank you. Thank you very much for being here, and thank you for the honor and distinction. An honor I really, really appreciate. It's a lifetime of work, and I appreciate it. I wanted to give credit to Patricia as well. That's really, she worked very, very hard, and for that I'm grateful and I appreciate it. Thank you, and thank you for everyone for this. Thanks to my co-authors. Please keep the papers coming, okay? Otherwise I'll die. Thank you. Thank you.
We will have some picture.
Making some money, right?
And with this beautiful photo moment, I would like to finish this afternoon, but not without saying a few words of thanks myself. Thank you very much again to Professor Zahra for all the incredible work you are doing over a whole lifetime. It's great. For the, of course, for the extremely interesting masterclass and for accepting the honorary degree. And next to every successful man is also a strong woman, or another man, but in this case it's a woman. And I want to thank you too, Miss Patricia Hope Zahra, also for joining our ceremony this afternoon. And we have a small but delicious and typical Belgian present for you. Enjoy. Thank you to Rector Herman van Goetem, to Dean Koen van den Bemt, to nominator Ine Paalman, and thank you to the Faculty of Business and Economics. And finally, of course, thank you to the University of Antwerp and to you all for joining us this afternoon. I hope to see you again, maybe in 2024.